I've not heard from.
Okay. These guys are unmuted.
Last I heard, he was still traveling. Last I heard, he was still traveling.
He's still traveling? Okay.
That's what my son told me.
Good.
Summer vacation, huh?
Okay. Some people leave, some people like me do. There were some last year. Yeah, I don't remember this one.
You know.
The deer, I have deer, I have chickens and grasshopper. Well, it has except one again in a minute, but on the whole, I think it has helped. Do they bite? No, I just have weighted down the edges. We put some on my tree. I would have them in a big bag. I've seen those early things, those stream things in your back sometimes. What? There's a stream, so we'll get started. It's like a stream sometimes when you leave in a bag, there's like this, I thought it was their interest. It's a parasite and it affects the inside of parasite. Just in some people. Ask one of the books. Okay. So. It doesn't look like Pete's gonna be here. It's 6:35, and I think I'd like to call the meeting to order. I don't have an agenda here. Okay. So roll call.
Chair Watson,
Here.
Vice Chair Howe,
Here.
Commissioner Bruner. Here. Commissioner McCarthy. Commissioner Smith.
Here. Okay, so do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Discussion,
Okay,
can we add public comment at the beginning here? There's a few people here. If they have something they'd like to say, I'd like to hear it.
that's certainly, at what point in the agenda would you like public comment?
I guess it would be,
Would it be before, after the presentations or actions or?
I would say both.
Oh, okay, so public comment, let's add, public comment after the approval of minutes. And then, after actions and presentations, public comment that relates to the master plan, and what we're discussing,
Sounds good to me.
okay? Do we need to make a motion for that? Or just-
So move. And public comment after approval of minutes and at the end of the discussion.
Okay, thank you. Second? A second. Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so do we have minutes? I don't believe there are minutes with this agenda tonight. Okay, okay, so let's move forward. We have actions and presentations. And the planning commission wished to discuss the master plans among the members here, what we have.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but you added public comments after the approval of the minutes and.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Thank you, Samara. I'm looking at my agenda and I'm kind of sticking to it a little too closely. Okay, so we have a member of the public present, and I don't know if anybody is on Zoom or the phone or the internet, but I'd like to entertain any public comment at this point in time.
Well, thank you, Mr. Watson. My question with the comprehensive plan, there was a map that was generated, I think, back in March. And that map really lacks any kind of detail. And the problem that I see is that you have properties that are close to the boundaries, pretty close to the boundaries of these planning areas. And the problem is, if you have a property that's close to one of the planning areas, you can't tell whether or not your property actually is in one or the other. And I did ask about that and received a response that there really wasn't a detailed map that was available to the public. It just seems to me that if ultimately the comprehensive plan is going to be used as a guide to make various decisions, that people need to know and the town needs to know what properties are in what area. Otherwise, you're going to get a dispute right out of the chute. Because the question is going to be the town saying, we think your property is in this particular planning area, and this is what controls. And the owner saying, no, I think my property is in this planning area, and this is what controls. So it just seems to me that it's important that there be a detailed map created so people can see exactly what lots are in what area. That way people understand the impact of this plan on their property. So that is something that I would like to see. I've begun looking through it and may very well have some other comments down the road, but initially it was just a matter of, you can't tell what area of property it's in.
Is that the map you refer to?
Yeah, I mean, it basically, it is posted on the town's website. And the problem is that it just can't really be used to determine what property is in which area when you get on the boundaries of those areas. Obviously, there's some properties that are right in the middle of an area, and it's going to be quite clear where they're at, but there are going to be properties where it's not clear. And so the most basic question that people are going to have is, how does this comprehensive plan affect my property? That's what most people are going to ask. And for some folks, they're not going to know. So that is my suggestion, that ultimately, before this thing is approved, that there is in fact a detailed map that shows specifically what parcels are in what.
So this is what is in the latest version.
Right.
And see, to me, it looks pretty clear where the lines are.
It's not.
Can you just come over and show?
Well-
Or can you project the map?
Oh.
Because mostly I feel like it's pretty prescriptive when I look at it, so I'd sure love to know the pieces that you feel like are not as clear, so we have a better idea
Well, if
of
you,
your differences.
From-
Well, let's see.
I will address my specific issue. If you
Okay,
look
good.
at,
And we're gonna project it too,
okay,
so that might help.
because if you look at
Now, page 57.
Rand Avenue and you look at Third.
Hang on, let's go over
Avenue,
here. And then everybody, I think, has a copy. So this is the one that's been published, whoops.
And it may be that this has more detail than what I have been looking at.
That's why I wanted to be
Sure,
sure
sure.
that
No, I
we
agree.
understand your concern.
But the question is, you can't tell which lots these are. So if you look at
Yeah.
Third and Grand, what you have is just this blocked out area, which I presume is all the commercial area. And then you have mixed use area up here, but you can't tell specifically which lots are included in these two areas. The problem is that may very well be the case elsewhere on this map where you have two areas.
I'm gonna get out.
Two
of some of
areas
these
that
maps.
are,
Just interesting.
Okay.
This is another.
What's that?
Here's my lot, and I have 4 lots. First.
Well, I wanted to get our map, Aaron.
Well, there's some, like I said, there's some parcels where it's gonna be quite clear. Let's say you're right in the middle of a particular area. It's gonna be real clear what area it is.
Like these spots here, but other than that, you know, you may not even be.
Oh, yeah. See, I feel like it does.
You have odd situations. I
No, but it's kind of based on the zoning map, which has
Lots
lots.
that are zone commercial.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
Kind of be combined with very zone residential, where there's actually.
That's why I wanted to see it.
There was a.
It's kind of important to know which.
See, that's the lots. And I feel like,
Well, it's.
let me just, Charles, let me just show you this to see. So here's our town zoning, and which I feel like it follows it pretty well. Because you can see each individual lot.
No.
See, I feel like I could figure it's actually, I feel like I could figure it out based on our zoning map.
No.
Look at my lot, I've got 4 city lots here, can you tell they're 4 lots, not parcel?
Well, this is what I'm saying, look at the existing map.
Yeah, but also here, look at it changes in the middle of the block here, and then here on this side.
Well, that's because the blocks, the lots, like my property is 3 lots.
Yeah.
So-
Right, this is,
But if you
my
could
place.
subdivide.
This is off by 30 feet.
Right. You think that's off 30 feet?
Yeah.
Is this off 30 feet? Is the,
I don't know.
okay,
It's different.
And then wondering if that right of way is accurate. It kind of needs to be accurate. And where is that map? Is the right of way exactly?
it's in page 57 of the posted plan.
This one here.
Yeah.
That's it.
Shrink.
Is that the right of way?
Mixed use.
Anyway, thank you. I just needed
Yeah,
to
what's your-
verify it for myself.
It's
When I looked at it, I was kind of like, yeah, okay.
The very-
But this map and the zoning map basically
It's numbered.
are there for 2 distinct purposes. Basically, the zoning map is what it is, and it is very detailed, where you can identify a lot, you can tell exactly which zone it's in. This obviously is a guide, it would be a guide to future decisions. And what I anticipated was that, in fact, you would have something in the same kind of detail as the zoning map. So you basically, a citizen could look and see exactly where their lot is in terms of which planning area it's located in. And I just can't do that off of that map. And I don't know how difficult it would be to be able to go ahead and change that map so that in fact you had that detail, same kind of detail you have with the zoning map. The zoning map, I believe, was prepared by a surveyor,
Right.
but it would be extremely helpful.
Well, here's what I'm wondering, is this plan is not a set in stone plan, it's kind of a general design effect, not that that you can't do something necessarily, it's just a guide. So that's why I'm not sure that you can expect this map to be prescriptive, and I'm only coming from my thoughts about a master plan, that it's kind of a generality, just like there's a dash line that is demarking, I think, the historical downtown, which is not, nobody's gonna step on one side or the other and say, you're in, you're out. So again, I'm new at master plans, but I'm not sure it's prescriptive.
Can I,
Can I address that comment?
Thank you.
My understanding, I mean, you're correct in that a comprehensive plan is basically a guide to future decisions. And there have been circumstances, and I think it was a circumstance in this town, where basically we had a master plan that sort of got put in a drawer somewhere, and not too many people actually looked at it or based their decisions upon that existing comprehensive plan. However, that's really not what should happen.
Exactly.
People should be looking at the comprehensive plan and saying, gee, this fits with or doesn't fit with the comprehensive plan. And therefore, it can be fairly significant. It may not be binding, it's not a zoning change, but it clearly can have a major impact on what decisions are made. And so my suggestion is you just need to make sure that everybody knows where their properties are in terms of the comprehensive plan.
Yeah, I want to thank you for your comment, and I tend to agree. I take I mean, it's like when I look at a map, it's like there's a line on that map. Where is that line? And I think that a similar comment can carry pretty much throughout this whole plan, and it's it lacks a lot of specifics. In fact, I have a. Are there other public comments?
I would, yeah.
There were a couple other people. Thank
Bill,
you.
before we leave the map topic, I just wanted to add something.
Oh,
Okay, so are there any other public comments at this point?
Yes.
Oh, okay, well, actually, Christina, I think I'd like to just add something to the map topic, and then, I'm sorry, we've kind of morphed into more of a work session here. But perhaps a disclaimer clearly on this map that it's not to be used for blah, blah, blah. I don't know if that would be satisfactory, because people tend to look at these things and take them at face value. And you know, I think we need to be as clear as possible. I think Charles Stewart's suggestions are well taken by me. So maybe the intent, a statement as to the intent of the future land use plan, and clearly there, so it doesn't get separated from the intent. So that, I don't know, but we can talk about that maybe later on. Okay, and Christina, you had your hand raised?
I did. I was trying to find the answer to my own question, but I can't. So I'm gonna ask you guys, the experts, Christina Patterson, Price Road. So I'm sure that all those things are explained in here, what gateways are and what the urban farm is, the descriptions of those. They're like on page 58 or
They're
up further,
Yeah, they're not in
the map.
they're not with the map, sorry.
The script, oh, okay.
Yeah, you have to.
They're and this is sort of a proposal of what is, because obviously there's some things that are labeled urban farm on here that are R2 now. So is that correct?
R2?
Well, like this whole riverbank that's green here is R2 currently. It's not urban farm. This is all R2 right here, but it's green as in urban farm. So I'm not sure why that is. Is it a proposal of what is the future, or is it current? Is it accurately current?
Urban, what's it
It's
called
supposed to
again?
be current. Urban farm.
So you're wondering if the zoning's gonna change based on this map that we have?
Well, why wouldn't you put an accurate map why wouldn't they put an accurate map in there with maybe aspirations of change? But why this currently isn't urban farm zoned? So I'm very confused about that.
Okay, Bill?
I think, you know, while we're talking about things like that, I mean, it's odd to me that there's no attribution or discussion of how this map came about. These properties along here are zoned industrial. This is the lumberyard zoned industrial, and this is the storage locker zoned industrial. This is my iron shop zoned mixed use. But these things right now are zoned, I'm not sure, I think it's C2 or C1. Why are they being changed to industrial? Because they have retail type businesses in them. The lumberyard is not industrial, that's a retail business. The storage lockers are industrial definition in the code. One of the only uses that's ever happened in the industrial zone in the town of Paonia is storage lockers. So I can see it on that half, but this happens as shops. I mean, I just don't understand it at all.
Bill, I'd like to I think everybody needs to go to page 21 and 22 and look at the definitions of these broad,
I looked,
Future
and I don't
growth.
think it fits.
well, but let's just read it.
Yeah.
Let's
Okay.
just talk about what's in here. So you are pointing to what's considered, well, this map says light industry, but this
Right, which-
page is light manufacturing.
There you go.
Why
Right.
are we,
So the category supports employment opportunities within the town. Hang on one second, let me make sure I'm reading the right one for the right color. Let's see, so we have a problem that our text doesn't match the legend. So I'm assuming that's light industry, which they have defined as light manufacturing. The category supports employment opportunities within the town that are more intense than downtown commercial core and mixed-use areas. These areas are typically near major roads for easy access. Uses in these areas should mitigate impacts on neighboring uses, especially residential. While this category is not included in many locations on the future land use map adopted with this plan, it is anticipated that there will be a growing interest in the use. Therefore, this land use category will be available for future map updates and amendments. The primary uses are small-scale manufacturing and fabrication, commercial, creative industries, supporting uses, storage, warehousing, wholesale retail, agricultural processing, residential, institutional. So my point is, you got to read these in conjunction with this map because they're not zoning. It's more of a broader use that goes beyond zoning. The master plan is not a zoning. That's done individually. So I'm just telling you, if you read it, it'll help. Because you're being literal with what's there, and they're just trying to do broader future uses, because we can't predict every use for everything now. Anyway.
okay, Bill?
Well, I think it should be more specific than it is, and it should have more explanation for why what's here. Because like what you've got here is you've got the print shop, you've got a bar, you've got a workout studio, you've got a lumber yard, and I just don't understand why they're in this new thing. And none of these categories actually correspond to our zoning designations.
I don't think they're supposed to.
So
It's
then
more
how do we?
broad. It's a broad look at 25 years into the future, and the zoning is sort of associated with these broad categories. Anyway, and also,
The problem that I have with that kind of lack of specificity, I think it should be somewhere in between perhaps, because zoning decisions are gonna be made on this. This is suggesting rezoning this, and it's extremely broad. Anyway,
if you read them, the zoning, they are very broad. Look at mixed neighborhood, which is right below light manufacturing. Primary uses residential, including single family, duplex, and triplex dwellings. Which is telling you that they're not prescribing that it has to be an R1. It's being described that there is the ability to make future decisions based on it continuing to have a look of a mixed neighborhood. That's.
Right.
He has his hand back. I didn't raise my hand, sorry.
Bill?
yeah, so I just think that it's a prescription for total confusion because it's so non-specific and everything is so general that you can argue that anything goes any place. And it's the end of meaningful zoning is the way I'm here. That's all I'm going to say about it.
My concern is if it gets more specific, then it starts directing zoning. And this is like a broad brushstroke about how these areas now are being used and what could happen in the future. And I fear that if it gets too specific, then that's going to come up and things, well, this should be this and this should be that. This is just a suggestion. I mean, my land is in wildlands, but I still do farming. And and it's like, yes, the wildlife use my land, but I also farm there. It's not, I don't feel that it's going to be zoned so that I can't use it one way or another. I just feel like this is pointing out that presently is kind of the zones, how the land use is right now. And then as it grows or changes, what can happen in these areas or potentially, but that would depend upon zoning and zoning changes.
Did come up with one more comment.
Okay, Bill.
The wildlife corridor, thank you for mentioning it, splits right across lots of properties. So what does that mean? And as far as wildlife corridors go, has the DOW been consulted about our designation of wildlife corridors? I didn't see any,
I think it's in the references.
is it?
I haven't read it, you know, I haven't reviewed the
I
reference, but it's in
would
there.
hope that the DOW has some comment to support. But I am concerned that, you know, it splits right through properties. So I don't understand what that means.
Lynn.
It does split, it splits right through my property, but you know, our property leads right almost directly to Jumbo. And so it is a wildlife corridor. And then the Minnesota Creek, the wildlife travel through that. So, you know, they've got the creek corridors as wildlife designation because that's how the animals travel. They travel through the creeks.
I think the whole Paonia is a wildlife corridor because there's no agricultural fencing, so we kind of get stuck with all the deer.
Right.
But what does it mean to be in a wildlife corridor? Does it mean there are not going to be fencing options for people? I mean, what does it mean? It's kind of, I guess I'm kind of interested in, like, I don't quite understand what the meaning of some of these proposed zones are. And the way I see it is what I've seen happen time and again is you get these statements and it's just going to be a guidance document, but then suddenly it just becomes the new reality. And we, you know, it morphs into the new law basically. And it's almost like the camel's nose under the tent in the beginning. And it morphs into like, it morphs into something more permanent. So I'm curious about this light manufacturing. And so, I mean, I guess this could apply to everything where it says, well, this category is not included in many locations. It is anticipated that there will be growing interest in this use. Therefore, this land use category will be available for future map updates and amendments. Well, that sounds like what this whole thing is about. It's not really, it's just visionary, but anything could change in the future, right?
Yes. Well-
So why not make that statement for everything?
Well, a comprehensive plan is designed to be amended.
Yeah,
Have you read, I mean.
yes, I have,
I mean,
Paige, but what I'm wondering about is why do they specifically say that for light manufacturing, which I think should be light industrial, or whatever they say here, light industry? And why don't we see that kind of applied to everything?
Maybe because of the range of uses it has in there, because they're pretty, you know, residential is pretty residential with a office or two. You know what I would say is, this is where your comments come in.
Mhm.
Write a comment and ask for it to change.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole
Okay,
comment.
I really am happy that we're actually meeting and
Yeah.
having a back and forth, because this like anonymous, this commenting that I never see. And I don't know who's choosing which comments to listen to and which don't. So I'm really happy that we're actually here together having a little bit of a discussion.
Right, no, I think
about
it's good, but I just want to say, I don't think, as a group, I don't know that we can come up with wordsmithing.
Yeah, no, but it's good to have a back and forth, pointing out some of the issues we're uncomfortable with. I think.
Remember, the
Okay,
public
that's
is
why-
still at the public.
Yes, I'm sorry.
Honestly, this feels like the first time that this interaction where we hear what you're thinking, you've read it, the public that's read it, and like this back and forth, this is so helpful. So thank you, and I really appreciate it. I'm concerned about this still, the zoning, like this aspirations for these things, like the Gateway community. I live in the Gateway belt, I guess, and we're R1 right now. And then I guess budding up at Riverbank is this urban farmland. So I appreciate the broad strokes and the, you know, having that, so there's all things are possible, but like currently it's R2 in that area, and you're changing it potentially to urban farmland, and a lot can go on there then. A lot goes on there now. They run like 300 head of cattle, you know, and they used to do that all summer long, and yet it's in town. So how did that happen? I don't know. But it's still going on, so if it's in this urban farmland, I'm worried that as residents in that gateway area, that's just gonna be allowed, and that makes no sense to me. That area can be urban farmland and they could get away legally because now that's the zoning. Right now, it's designated R2 and they're running cattle like crazy. Now, anyway, so it leaves it too broad for me. Like, there's a neighborhood already there that's happy with their designation. And if something's gonna come in and sort of override the harmony of that neighborhood, it should be looked at. Thank you.
Another thing that I think is unfortunate with this map is I think it should include the entire area covered by the Paonia water system. The current comprehensive plan includes that, and one of the glaring lacks in this, that I have a checklist of the things required by the statute that I think we should go through. But you've got Paonia's future 317 water taps owned by Arch Coal, and the first 100 have to be used by contract on their land up on Lamborn Mesa. And then they've got another 217 after that they can broker, or they can use on their land up there, or their land out along Minnesota Creek, which is not shown here. And if this is going to last 20 years, the day is coming when they're going to stop mining coal. And the minute they do, they're going to want to develop that property. And this plan should have a bold-faced acknowledgement of that. It should look at where those properties are, and we should be looking at the infrastructure, roads, water, sewer, that we're going to have to put in place to serve them.
Except it's county.
This is
The water taps are one thing, but we're not responsible for putting roads in the county.
No, but we are responsible for a plan. We have a 3-mile area, and in the existing comprehensive plan, that area is included.
And
it doesn't actually address this particular concern.
it would if we had an IGA with the county. We have a draft IGA, with Delta County.
Well,
There's
this
not
is-
a drop, there's an IGA
Excuse
going
me.
up to the highway.
No.
and
Right.
it's
Well,
not a
we have a
draft.
draft one that was
In the
presented to
future.
the
Okay, Bill?
trustees.
Excuse me, if this is an aspirational document, we should be including that.
Yes.
We're going to the county and we're saying,
Mhm.
this is, we're trying to work with you. We agree that this should be here. So this map should be expanded to include that.
Well, and I just want to say, we have a current IGA. I have no idea what's in
Would
it.
you mind-
Yeah,
would you
you're,
mind-
you're.
Sorry,
you're not
sorry,
using the hand
sorry.
switch.
Sorry. But do you remember we had a draft IGA come in front of the trustees? And it hasn't been finalized. And I don't know why, but it needs to be, in order to be in this, it needs to be put in this clearly. Because it will address those things. Because at this point, they're relying on that IGA, which is old. And we got to get the new one done, which should.
Okay, Bill, so the statute allows for the for the
Oh, absolutely.
greater planning area, it actually details the number of miles outside of city boundaries, that 3 miles.
So, I agree. That is a glaring omission here, but the
Yes.
town needs to do it. The town has to get the IGA completed, not the
So if this
contractors.
is an aspirational document, why do you need a completed IGA? Why can't it be an aspirational IGA, right?
Why are you being flippant?
No, I'm serious.
Why are you-
I'm serious.
Because we have one coming, forthcoming.
Yes, I know,
that will
when
be
we
new.
can mention that in our plan, and we can say, this is aspirational, it's not, we're not being exaggerate with this, but this will be coming and it's going to include these elements.
No, yeah.
Is that, Bill?
My view of it is we have a contractual obligation to provide that water. And I can't imagine that the county is going to say, no, we're not going to approve your plan because you show where that's going to go. So I don't understand why, number one, why we haven't worked on the IGA, and number two, why you want to wait until it's completed to amend it. Because you've got comments in the plan for people asking their properties to be designated as urban farmland, and it's just black. on this map. These are areas that will eventually be annexed. But
Okay,
anyway,
okay, Stefan?
So the one thing that you guys have to remember is any IGA has to be accepted by the county. So we could go out and be aspirational, but it would be spinning our wheels if the county isn't in agreement with it. I understand the statute says one thing, but it also says that anything that is affected by this plan must be approved by the governing bodies. And in this case, it's the Board of Trustees and the county commissioners. So if we do something that's 3 mile and they say no to it, then we're back at this table again, trying to figure something out.
So are you,
Bill?
well, it seems to me we're back at this table one way or the other. So I think we should be proactive and put it in there now. And if the county says, no, that's a deal killer, then we take it out.
But they've already said that.
They said it's.
So they've already said that's why your draft that was presented to you, I believe it was 2022. That's why it's still sitting in a folder waiting to be addressed, because the county's already said the 3 mile growth management area isn't going to happen. And then that gentleman who was the community development director is no longer with the county, and they're still waiting on a community development director. So your county administrator, our county administrator, is acting in that role as well. It's not an ideal situation.
Well,
follow up on, so are we at a dead end?
You weren't recognized.
Sorry.
Okay, you can speak.
Are we at a dead end with the IGA because they don't have a planner? Do we know what they didn't like about our draft? Because I've not heard any follow-up.
Yeah, to the chair.
Mhm.
What the county said is that they said that we're not going to get our entire water service area in a growth management area. So, because that water service area is more than 3 miles. I guess we could try again to say, could we do 3 miles? But again, that takes some chance.
Okay, Bill?
so regardless of a 3 mile growth management area, there is a physical reality of the water system. It's the biggest deal that Paonia has going. It should be included in this map. And in fact, if I may move on a little bit, one of the items that's required by the statute is a map showing the location and certification of an adequate supply of water for the projected growth. And I can't find where that's addressed in this document. And the moratorium is not addressed. The fact that the only completed engineering studies the town has say that our water system was oversold by the firm Yield 20 years ago. And I just can't understand why there isn't a legitimate discussion of these things in this document. And there's a whole list of things. It's like what the statute says is the master plan is a plan for the physical development of the municipality. It's to guide land development decisions, and the plan with its accompanying maps, plats, and charts and descriptive matter must, after consideration of each of the following, where applicable, show the commission's recommendations for the development of those areas. And when the plan is approved, the officers are required to sign the maps indicating these things. And I can't find maps that, I mean, there's a whole list of things in here. Character and extent of existing or proposed streets, general location of public places and facilities, location of existing public utility terminals, adequate supply of water, must identify water supplies and facilities sufficient to meet the needs of the public and private infrastructure, reasonably anticipated or identified in the planning process. The water conservation policies, I think it recommends that we adopt some, but we have to have them in the plan. Acceptance, removal, allocation, widening, narrowing of abandonment of streets, a zoning plan. character, location, extended community centers, housing developments, on and on, population growth and housing needs to accommodate population for the specified increments of time, areas containing geologic hazards, steep slopes, flood risk. None of that is in this where I could find it. And it's supposed to be in here in the form of maps. And what it comes down to looking like to me, there's multiple references in here to identify things like this. And what I see this document as is an outline of a plan. And the law calls for we take that outline of that plan and we actually determine where these recommendations go. Because when you just got the outline, it's the Wild West. And our job is to come down with some specific recommendations. And I think best practices include a planning commission that is, I don't know what the word is, but it's there enough that it comes back on a regular basis, like annually, and looks at how do we do, what's going on, does this still fit? And what we've had is a planning commission that's not been engaged, and our plan is very old. And when I look at it, it's not that bad. I'd rather kind of redo that than go with this that is so general and lacking in my honest opinion. So.
If I might, I'll just say that I was asking exactly the same thing. Where are the maps? And we are getting some maps because they weren't all provided. Like they should be. I think there was a miscommunication with the contractor who didn't realize that some of those maps had to be submitted. So we're kind of on a path to get some.
Did you raise your hand? Thanks. Bill was pointing at you.
Right, he did. So,
Yeah.
So, I don't know if there was a miscommunication or we just weren't provided with maps. But we did get access to a folder that has maps that include previous things that have been done. So with roadways, public facilities, things like that, but it also included sensitive or confidential information regarding our critical infrastructure, regarding water. It's okay to show something like our watershed area, but we shouldn't be showing our watershed protection plan map that includes diversion boxes and things like that. That's how you get somebody to tamper with your water system. And so those maps ought not to be included, but something that has our watershed as a whole should be included. And we do have access to a map that includes that, but it was never provided to anyone, outside of us asking.
Well, I think we're being a little premature to schedule an adoption of the plan when we pretty much acknowledge that it's not sufficient.
I thought tonight we were discussing this, so then any comments or concerns we had, we can then, go back to the contractors and say, include a plan of the a map of the watershed area, or the things that we think are important. So I was thinking this gives us the opportunity to strengthen this and bring our concerns in.
Yes, I think that's right. I'm concerned with the time that's placed on this. But one of the issues I think that's going to come up is the plan says these things should be identified. It gives aspirational, almost metaphysical visions and says these things should be identified. And to now expect the people that got this far are now going to make those decisions for us and include them in a map we're going to put in here and say, okay, they're great. I'm skeptical that that's a realistic expectation.
We only have $900 left in this contract. So what work gets done will be done in-house. It's gonna have to, because there's not enough, unless we can specifically say to them, could you please revise this map and this map only?
And I would suggest that that's not gonna do it. And, if it takes more money, it takes more money. If it takes more time, it takes more time. This is a very important thing. This has been almost 30 years coming. And I do not feel right to be bulldozed into doing something that I couldn't agree with because of a couple of bucks, one way or the other. So.
I just think there's time to see what these maps consist of and what they look like. Can they be used as is? And then potentially craft some of the text to go with it in-house. But I'm not arguing with you. It's not the best product I would have liked.
Okay, Stefan?
And I should also note that the Sun consultant that was working on maps is no longer working for Phoenix Rising Resources. And there may be an opportunity to contract with them directly to make changes to maps.
Okay. So, Paige, go ahead.
Well, I just wanted to, in my review of this, my previous review and the review of this version, what I would like to do is we have a vision statement and then we have values. And then under that laundry list of values for each element, which may have 4 values up to 9 values, there are just a whole long list of policies. And in my looking at other comprehensive plans, the values have become objectives and there are certain policies that are associated with that particular outcome. Right now, you have to try to figure out which policy 12, which exactly outcome of the 4 values, for instance, with land use, if that makes sense. Whereas I was looking at other plans and it's a lot more organized so that somebody using it can say, well, let's go to, let's see, where's land use, just for instance, I'm on page 8.
Hi. How are you? I'm good. Hello, you.
Oh. Yeah, so if you look on page 18, there's 4 values: open space, the town's rural character, clear planning for a growing community, a diverse, successful community, which are all good values.
Can I interrupt? Can we bring the page up? Is it hard to do that? Bring it up on the wall there?
What page is it?
Oh, it's 18 in the packet.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. And then under that, there are 9 different policies, some of which really relate to one specific value. So I would like to see it reconfigured so you have policies that are dedicated to a particular value and call that more of an objective, which really what it is taking the puzzle apart and putting it back together with specificity. And if you look at Ridgeway's plan, which was one that was recommended, that's exactly what they have done. And it's so much easier to see, oh, you know, what are the goals or what are the things you can do to try to achieve the value that's been presented. So I was going to take it upon myself to just try to do that, to present and give you for food for thought.
Thank you.
Lynn?
So, any question to that? So then you would like take the values and under each one, if it related to a policy, just put policy LUF-1 and then it could jump to that policy if somebody wanted to look at it.
Well, I would actually recreate the document. I would
Right, but I mean-
physically the text, yes.
But that's how you would do it.
Mhm. And yeah, if you, and I did that, sort of, I may not be able to bring it up, but anyway. Stefan.
Okay, Stefan?
So what was being discussed was changing these values into objectives, which makes sense for any sort of a comprehensive plan, period. But if you look at the values, we're close to having an objective. Objective shows some sort of action. So like that second bullet point, the town's rural character, historic heritage, and farming and ranching legacy. I think to make that an objective, you would say preserve the town's rural character, historic heritage, farming and ranching legacy.
Actionable words.
Bill,
So as long as we're getting into policies, I find them self-contradictory in cases. Like, for example, move new commercial development out to the gateways to preserve the rural character of the gateways. You know, as you say, this is supposed to be guidance for people making decisions. And when you've got that kind of guidance, you're going to get that kind of decisions. And I think one of the things in here, I noticed on the way down in there's Scott's notes about one of the planning sessions, the public sessions. And he says that there seemed to be general agreement on the 4 values presented. So number 1, this was presented, and that there were only 3 dots for heritage and the historic, you know, the historic uses, and 23 for preserving the rural character. But he says, I think that that's just because of who showed up, and we're using the Heart and Soul project to make our decision here. So we're going to include that. And it's like, wait a minute, the Heart and Soul project was Bart Peterson's class project from 2014. And it says in this document here too, that this is based on that and supplemented by all the things that happened more recently. And it's like, how is this appropriate? That this class project from a clerk who was dismissed for malfeasance is the basis for this comprehensive plan. That's beyond belief to me.
Does anybody have a copy of that Heart and Soul? I wasn't able to find it.
You can't get it on the town website. It's not available.
Did you?
and maybe if you Googled it or something. You think,
I said, chain of custody is my house.
Sam, did you have it?
I don't have it right this moment, but I could send that out to you guys. I believe I have a full copy of it in the records. I could send it out to you.
So much has changed since 2000.
Stefan?
On that note, a couple of things. Scott was done after like the first couple of meetings in early 23. So his time ended, he moved on. So I don't know how much he actually informed this draft. I think this is just a note, but then it also says that history and heritage was the strongest aspect of the Heart and Soul project that included a lot of more rural folks. So it seems it still needs to be included. It doesn't say that it was included, and this might be a good question for the principal of the consulting firm to see if it was actually what informed this draft.
It says right here, this is our number 2 value, is historic heritage. And so what you were just saying about the nature of the Heart and Soul project is it was about, that was the entire theme of that entire exercise was our heritage, the heart and soul. And that's not appropriate for a vision based on who lives here and has got this, has got the stakes in here now. Since that thing came about, there's been another thing that's not addressed in this plan is in 2014 and back in, around that time, there were coal mines closing up. It was hard times in Paonia. The future was entirely uncertain. There was, with good reason, a big push put on tourism. And it's been wildly successful. We've got tourist things happening here all the time now. And we still are kind of pushing that way in this plan. But something that I think that's happened that is not being addressed is there's been a fundamental shift. And the heart and soul of Paonia today, there's a lot of people that work remotely. They're young people, they're raising their kids here. And that's not included in this discussion. And I think that there's been enough of a change to where there is an economy that's based on things that just didn't exist in the world when the Heart and Soul Project was done, that have changed it enough to where an overemphasis on tourism is actually detrimental to the ability of people to live here and have a healthy place to raise their kids. It drives up the price of housing. You've got people coming in here buying houses and renting them out for short-term rental or Airbnbs and living in Denver. So you're hollowing out the community. You've got absentee owners. There's been changes here that are not really acknowledged in this document, and I think they should be.
Remote work as
It should
it'd be interesting to know. I know there is a lot of, we have Elevate that came here recently, and that's
big change.
yeah, it really has changed the what people can do here. And I know COVID, I know they acknowledged COVID as being part of that, but COVID was just kind of something that sped up the remote work and really kind of pushed it forward. I know there are other communities in the state, like Colorado Springs, they're saying the remote work has actually brought the East Coast and West Coast economies to their town, to where they're attracting workers that have wages that locals can't compete with. And that's one of the downsides of the remote work in some communities. And so that is part of the housing problem too. I think that we're seeing there are people who can come and live here who don't have to rely on local jobs to live here because they have remote work. But I don't know how you'd reflect it in the comp plan page.
I just did a word search, and the only place, it's in policy econ number 4. On page
what
26,
page?
it references remote.
Yeah,
Ensure an integrated and balanced role for tourism and remote workers in the local economy, and allow local businesses, community members of the town of Paonia to receive the economic benefit of tourism and spending by remote workers. 26. While balancing this with housing affordability and the development of year-round, well-paying, place-based jobs for residents. So that is one policy right there. That's a big policy.
I know.
can we,
Let's go.
okay, go ahead.
Well, and I did go to every one of the public meetings, and, there at several of them, there were quite a few people who showed up. And, and that is the only due diligence that we really required, that we get a community input. So if the feeling is we didn't get accurate community input, I don't know what you do about that, because people are reticent to show up or talk about things, or they're disenfranchised. I don't know, but it's based upon the best information they could gather from those meetings, from my experience of being in those meetings, because I see things reflected in here that were really brought up with all their papers of everything going on. So,
Bill?
But then, you just read that thing about, balance all these things. It doesn't give any guidance about how. And to put that stuff out there like that without some description of how is it's metaphysical.
I think we went at one of the prior meetings on this, we went through, there were action items, and then it became too specific. And I believe, and I could be wrong, Stefan, correct me, but we asked them to take those out and be more general. So there weren't specific action items.
Well, and I was just gonna say, because the comprehensive plan is not to be prescriptive. This is the things we're supposed to be striving towards, and you make your decisions based on what's put in front of you at the time, as I understand a comprehensive plan. So yeah, it's aspirational. A comprehensive plan, some of this is truly aspirational, and it's up to the staff, electeds, and citizens to make it happen when they have that particular, I guess I'd call it element. Anyway, that's how I understand it.
So I have a question. When there's a statement like preserve the rural character What does that mean? Paonia is an urban area. We're talking about potentially doubling the amount of housing in here with everybody can have an ADU. So what does it mean to preserve the rural character? Are we talking about the farmlands outside of town, which we have no jurisdiction over? How do you preserve the rural character
I think you
when
need to look,
something, yes,
I think if you need to focus on the policies that are provided under that value
yeah,
to see if you think that policy can get at some way of keeping that in mind, to integrate that into the thought when somebody comes in for development or what could, because we cannot predict everything into the future, and this is the roadmap of things to consider when something does
yes,
come
I
in.
agree with that. But when we're talking about doubling the housing in this town, and we're just doing it without the master plan, or we're doing it as part of the master plan, although it's not in here for us to look at. How we're saying one thing, but we're doing another one, and it's that kind of, I don't understand how they interrelate.
But
Yes,
and-
and you too. Everybody has. a
Yes.
hand up. Who would like to go first?
I already talked.
I think the housing study didn't recommend doubling. the
Well, if
amount of
everybody can
housing.
have by right an ADU on their property,
But there was, I think they talked about limits and it's like you can't just go and say, well, only these people or this area can have ADUs. It's not fair. But when it comes up to somebody going for a permit, that's really when you look at the situation. Are they blocking somebody's solar access? What are the things that would require not giving them a permit to put in an ADU there?
yeah, I don't know legally, how that would play out. We were told that it can't be it should be by special review because the town would get sued. So, I don't know if we agreed with that, but that's what the last iteration, I think, suggested. So to me, that means that everybody by right gets an ADU, that could be 800 square feet, a large. And that's a lot of house in a town that wants to stay rural.
I don't agree with that number.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, Paige?
The draft ADU rules did not do by right. There are still all sorts of considerations.
Okay, and they're not, this plan says this is part of the plan, but it's not here for us to look at either. So,
I'm assuming it's supposed to be attached.
yeah, Bill?
So, talking about the town getting sued, I think we're making work for lawyers if we're gonna take aspirational values like that and then look at them when a developer comes in with a proposal. When the developer comes in with a proposal, his decision gets made on zoning. Is my understanding. And,
Okay. Are you done, Bill?
yes.
Okay.
So one of the things that is missing in here, and my just reading, really, I've been looking at Ridgeways. They have a growth framework, and that was designed for developers, for the considerations to be taken for developers. We don't have, in my opinion, a relatively good growth framework to work from. And Stefan, I don't know if you would agree with that, but it's fragmented in the way this is proposed. And I really recommend everybody look at Ridgeways, simply because I think their growth framework, they actually talk more about each of these areas, whatever these are called. And so.
Okay. Stefan?
So, in this draft, the town's draft, if we were to change values to clear objectives, and you were to say, instead of the town's rural character, but preserve the town's rural character, historic heritage, and farming and ranching legacy, and apply actions to that or policies, that would almost look like Ridgeways. This is right out of their plan. It says, goal CHR3, promote Ridgeway's identity as a ranching and agricultural community and preserve the rural character of landscapes surrounding Ridgeway. Their action, they have a number of action items or policies. Action CHR3A, revise subdivision regulations or PUD regulations to encourage the retention of agricultural land or the incorporation of small-scale urban agriculture as community benefits were appropriate or where appropriate or desirable. And so if we were to do something similar to that, where you have objectives and then those policies that support those objectives, I think that gets closer to a document that we're all looking for. The way to move forward with that would be to tell me what you want as far as a comment sheet, so we can start making those changes. Because the time is on, unfortunately. I mean, we can't hold a special hearing to adopt closer to September 30th, but the time is on. We've already gotten one extension with this grant. And in order for me to draw down from it, we've got to adopt something. So.
Bill?
I would be surprised if what is it for the agency that.
Is it DOLA?
I should be surprised that DOLA would want us to hastily adopt something that we're going to regret. In fact, I think it would probably be counter to the spirit in which the grant was given, to knowingly adopt something that's not really right. I would be amazed if they wouldn't give another extension if we're showing our due diligence and we've actually got something to work with now, and we just need a little more time. I would suggest that feelers be put out along those lines to DOLA.
Okay, how does that happen?
I would think.
Stefan?
So I would think to be able to show some progress, the very first step is to start putting comments into a spreadsheet. So we can show that we are doing our absolute best to meet the deadlines of this extension before we go out and ask for it. So I think to say that we're doing something hastily, I disagree with that. This has been going on now since 2022. And when it was selected in 23, we've had multiple public meetings to get us to this point. We're almost there. I know it looks like it's a daunting task. It is for the people that are going to have to work on this document. But I think with the input from each of you, that we can get to something that we can all agree is good for this town. And I would rather go, hey, here's where we're at. We're going to need a couple more months to get there, but here's where we're at. Here's where I've got comments. We're making edits, and have something to present to DOLA rather than to just stand and ask them for another extension. I think that's the best path.
That's a good suggestion. I do want to say that I know that we've been working very hard on it in the past, but the thing is, I just think the guidance wasn't there, and there was a lot of diffused energy. You know, I mean, you know what I'm saying. I don't want, so I think there was some experience.
Let's make some comments.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, I like this idea, and that, this is a good basic outline that we can start from and say, okay, we need to be more specific here. Here, we maybe need these maps, but to get it to the point where we say, we can use this general outline, but we're going to be making some changes, along with trying to get an extension. So,
Okay, Bill?
So another wrinkle in the statutes is that we're not required to adopt the whole thing at one time. If we were to adopt a part of this plan, how would that fit with the language of the grant?
It wouldn't allow me to draw down the final. They would need a final accepted document or adopted document in order for us to move forward. So it gets us there, but it's not quite there. But that is one thing, if we want to continue to move along, is if we do find that we're this month or so that we have, that we can get through, I don't know, the future land use element and get that adopted. I mean, that's why we held one very specific workshop on it. It's because it is the most important piece that informs this entire plan. I think if we can say, hey, we got all the way here, but we've run out of time, can this be adopted, show them that progress, that may even give us an extension.
Say, adopting
That
element.
In particular.
I mean, it's sure shows people.
Kind of prioritize, so it's not like the recreation plan comes before the land use plan.
Correct.
Sort of thing. Okay.
So another wrinkle in this whole thing is if there's a recreation and tourism component here. That's not required by the statute for this town. We're less than 2,000 people. We don't have to have that. That draws heavily on the Paonia in Motion document, which I've gone through it once, and I found their policies and objectives to be wildly out of sync with reality in terms of cost and location for a lot of this stuff. So maybe we could just not do that part right away, because the Paonia in Motion plan has been assigned to a committee for revision at this point too. Right, okay. And another issue that I think needs to be considered is in the housing action plan, there are pages of recommended zoning changes that it seems like if that's part of this plan, those things all need to cross-reference too. And I mean, and that's not included in this document. Maybe, I mean, I don't know that that has to be part of this document. Because
Could
it's
it,
gonna muddy the waters.
could it be added later as an addendum because it's not really there yet?
It might have,
You know, we could just say that once that document is complete and approved, it's an addendum to this.
that's doing it in phases.
It has been approved. The housing action plan has been approved.
I thought it was approved for adoption, for use into the plan. It's not, it's,
We adopted it, period.
it's a part of the comprehensive plan. How can you adopt it?
No, it's a separate document. That was a separate contract done because the state's pushing for that. So it was not done only to be part of the comprehensive plan, but because it's there, the thought was you could start taking it and integrating it into the comprehensive plan. It's considered its own standalone
I
document.
just remember making a motion for the planning commission that I was approving it for inclusion into the master plan, to present to the board for inclusion into the master plan. That's the motion the planning commission made.
I'd have to go back, I'll ask Sam if she'll go back and see what
Yeah,
that
it was the
motion was
I
from the
made the motion,
trustees.
so it would be interesting to.
Sorry, I
But
don't,
that was the planning commission.
Yeah.
So like having these two elements kind of separate but supposedly together has been very confusing, you know, yeah. Okay,
But again, it's what they were tasked to do, to look at that document and incorporate, you know,
and
elements of that.
when did that adoption happen? I'm
For the housing
curious,
action.
yeah. I'd be curious to know what meeting that was too, as far as the board.
yeah, I'm trying to remember.
But I mean, if it's,
Probably the spring.
It
And
was-
I think,
yeah.
I think we could task
Because-
Sam to find that.
because I
those meeting
remember being
minutes.
told, we're not adopting it, we're accepting it for inclusion. And then there can be, when you look at the entire master plan, things could be amended. That's what I remember the
I
discussion.
apologize,
was
I don't remember that,
Yeah.
but you're maybe absolutely right.
Yeah,
And I sort of remember that same thing.
Do you?
yeah.
Yeah. That it wasn't, we were saying, this is it, we were saying, this is some language we could
This is the
use
body
to look at, to make, you know, now go in and dig deeper.
So it would be good to get those motions and, so we're all on the same page. Okay,
I was just wondering, anyway, never mind.
okay. Okay, so, prioritize, so it sounds like, we've, prioritizing certain areas. We're gonna be putting, okay, let's go through what we've discussed here so far, so we can kind of all be clear here. So we were gonna, kind of looking at the components of the master plan, prioritizing which ones, are the most important per statute. And starting to, put together comments for a spreadsheet, right? That's what, I don't know, does someone have a better way of saying that? Synopsizing, synopsizing that. Bill, you're pretty good with words.
What am I gonna
I
say?
had a long day. So what we discussed here, we were talking about kind of, the kind of taking from the framework here. Okay,
There's some things we talked about including.
okay,
Do you want to parse elements,
yeah, we were talking.
prioritize the specific elements? I'm just thinking if you get to the table of contents.
Yeah.
and everything else. Get to that.
Because there's a lot here. I thought the public comments were interesting to read too. I actually enjoyed looking at that, although I think some people's phone numbers may want to be redacted off those comment sheets. I don't know how appropriate it is to include that, but, okay, so.
And I would suggest all those comments not be in the master plan. I mean, it's just
Okay,
too much.
that's kind of work.
Yeah. for this.
Okay, so we have the table of contents. So we're talking about zoning, that was a big thing, I think Stefan brought that up.
We have to have a zoning plan. It's one of the required elements.
So if we kind of can identify what things were,
Could you?
what was your statement, Stefan, about zoning?
This is not zoning. This is
Yeah.
future land use designations.
Future land use, that's what you were suggesting, we put this on a DOLA.
It is not zoning.
Okay, future land use designations.
Hang on one second. I'm kind of curious to see what Bill was reading the stats. And I've got them here too. What's the?
This, I pulled some, it's not a complete statute.
Oh, and I got the complete. So tell me what number.
For which, for the zoning?
Yeah, what you read regarding zoning, because I don't.
Yes.
Sorry.
No, it's not.
3123, 206, 1F, a zoning.
Well, read that statute again, 37.
Oh, okay.
3123, 206,
3123, 206.
1F.
1F.
And if I might add, this is the one Suzanne will like, because it's a zoning plan for the control, sorry.
Okay, no, go ahead.
Sorry. A zoning plan for the control of the height, area, bulk, location, and use of buildings and premises. Such a zoning plan may protect and assure access to appropriate conditions for solar, wind, or other alternative energy sources. However, regulations and restrictions on the height, number of stories, size of buildings, and other structures, and the height and location of trees and other vegetation shall not apply to existing buildings, structures, trees, or vegetation except for new growth on such vegetation. So I don't take this as a zoning plan as much as what they did in Ridgeway is they limited the height of buildings in certain planning areas. And I think that was to get at this. But so my point is it's a much smaller piece of zoning to protect people's solar energy and, and you could add in gardens.
Yeah.
So I think it's important to have for sure.
Okay. So that's
I think it's high time.
1F.
Some protection for solar, regardless of whether it's installed currently.
Okay.
So that's a new, I don't think there's anything in here. There might be, maybe. Anyway, keep.
Yeah. Yeah, let's see, so, let's go to my page here.
That would interface with where EDUs go.
Okay. Okay. Okay, so I'm thinking in terms of, how we're gonna there's a lot here, so to be the most, and you can comment on anything you want, but to be the most efficient, to comment on the most, relevant things, to move forward with that's what I would like to see as a goal, and I don't know if it would help to kind of have a framework, so we can kind of understand when we're commenting, what to zero in on, what to focus in on, although you can comment on anything. What way are we not wasting our time? You know what I mean? We're being the most conserving of our time and effective. So Bill?
Well, the future land use planning map is certainly germane.
Okay.
And when you get down to that, it's the project Paige was talking about is trying to actually connect the visions and the policies. So we can
Okay.
hash through some of that stuff.
Okay. So looking at the visions and policies and thinking in terms of what Stefan was saying, which was values, instead of values and policies, we're gonna call it objectives
And policies.
objectives and policies. Okay.
And
Okay.
if I might,
Mhm.
I think there's no reason that, because right now there's 4 values under land use.
Mhm.
And it could be somebody reads through this and says, we're missing one.
Mhm.
And then we could have a new objective. Because it's possible the policies that have been provided under here may not have a place to go
Okay.
necessarily. I have not juggled it yet.
Okay.
And so it could be, I could do something like, say, feels like we need something for this issue,
Okay.
if that makes sense. And I'm happy to do that, and get started on that
Okay.
right away.
Okay.
So there's something to look at soon.
Okay.
We also talked about a map of the watershed area.
Map of watershed area. And Stefan, were you saying that there's someone who we might approach who used to work with a plan that we could look into getting that map from, or is that something we just have that we can start informally using before it's formalized by a professional?
We do have a map of our watershed, but there is, the person that worked on creating these maps for the consultant, does have a shop in town, but is no longer working with Phoenix Rising Resources.
So I would suggest in terms of water maps, that we absolutely have to have a map that shows the extent of the water system. And I would suggest a item in this plan that if we can't include a portion of that water system in a 3-mile plan, we're never going to sell another tap in that area. And we're going to look really hard to make sure people don't pirate them. I mean, fair is fair.
It's a little ironic because it's difficult because the town owns the water system. It supplies the town. We make a comprehensive system for the town, but there's this 50% of the water system is being used by outside users that we have apparently no control over. So it's a little bit of a conundrum. Yeah.
Well, part of the objective of the plan here is to have a harmonious relation with those people. And I gotta say, there's a contract being presented as a mandatory thing to some of these water companies that I read through it. And if I was one of these water companies, I'd find it onerous and not very neighborly at all. So I don't know if it'd be appropriate for the board, the commission to be looking at some
Okay, are
of
we off
topic
topic here?
those things.
Yeah.
Okay,
But we need a map of the water system and we need to reconcile our ability to plan for where that water system is versus our willingness to provide water for growth in areas where we're not able to control what happens at all.
okay. Okay, so, okay. Any other comments here about our topics here? Paige?
I was just wondering if we want to go ahead, because we definitely need some of the maps that are in the statute. And I believe that we have access to them. I saw kind of a list today. If we could, Stefan, do you think it's worth at least trying to get the one of the roads with the bridges? Trying to get that now and have that, since we know we have to have it in the plan eventually?
So try to start compiling the collection of documents.
Mhm. But I just don't know if that's, I guess it depends on what our end goal is. Try to get as much done as we can or get as much of it done well.
Well, which ones are relevant to the things that we're commenting? I know they're all relevant to the master plan, but what ones are really helpful for people when they're making their comments?
There's a copy of these things. And if it helps to have that in front of you.
To the tip. That's-
There's an extra one here, just Stephanie.
Oh, what I have.
And this is what Bill read off previously about, what the statute requires of a master plan.
Right. A, B, C, D.
Yeah.
And we have snippets of it, but we don't have.
Yeah. So, I mean, I've tried this website, but I don't know how well I'm doing with this, if I've left this out or. But, yeah, but I mean, to make meaningful comments, especially when you have limited time, it's really nice to know. You know what I mean? So we're all
Focus.
focused and.
Perhaps, we should meet again after getting this far and be more prepared to be specific on these things.
Mhm. Is that
Not trying to stall.
No.
I mean, we need to study it
Just-
more in order to make intelligent
And it
decisions.
doesn't have to be hours and hours of meeting, it can
Yeah,
just
I mean, you know,
short meetings,
Yeah.
maybe, or, you know, relatively short meetings to just see where we're at. See the progress that's been made, you know. What do you think, Lynn? You have your hand up.
Well, I was just thinking that I'd like to consider the recommendation Stefan made of that we kind of I don't want to use the word adopt because it sounds really concrete, but that we go ahead and say that we accept this as a framework to work from and then create outlines where if we need more money and more time, that we then start working. Because I don't really see that happening between now and when we've said that we need to have a public hearing. Otherwise, so that if we just say that that we do accept this as a framework, it needs work. And we need to go for more time and money and then fill in blanks.
Okay, and Phil?
I just have to point out that the town of Paling has
I
a
was gonna
regrettable
say this.
track record in fixing it later.
And it never
I'm
happens.
very hesitant to adopt something that I don't think is worthy. And it's like marrying somebody and thinking you're gonna change it.
It's like putting Tyvek on your house and never getting deciding.
Well, but if you adopt it as a framework to
Yeah.
work from, we're not
Well,
saying
you
adopt it
adopt it.
as.
Well, statutorily, what can you do? I mean, it's like what is the grant, you know, but he was talking about spreadsheet.
Something to go to
comments into-
Dole with.
Yeah, starting to do the meat and, you know,
Not adopt, but
really,
have comments,
yeah, we have meaningful.
specific ways to
Well,
fix.
Come up with different words, but I don't care. But I mean, I think that, this is a framework that a lot of time got put into.
Yeah.
And we can use it and then flush it out as we go and versus trying to do it all at once right now. And
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening.
Right, no, yes. I agree, if we can put enough concrete comments into how we're gonna fix it, to use that as the due diligence to get a little more time.
So is it time to entertain a motion right now? I mean, I don't know if people have like enough of the words put together to make something that's.
Do we need a motion to get these maps in our hands?
I don't know.
Do you think so, Stefan?
Seems like it just should be part of the
It's
plan.
part of the comments, right? So,
Yeah.
So, yeah. So. I mean, I don't want to get so constrained by the formality of Robert's rules that we just can't figure out what to say. Because I mean, we're just kind of trying to do our job as a planning commission here too, you know, moving forward with this.
Well, I wonder if we could ask Stefan to make a comment in his own comment thing of the maps that we need to have for insertion. And that would be your comment that's made on the record. And then we have the leverage to hire, I don't know, see if we can do it ourselves or what we need to do. Because I think those maps are the kind of some of the meat or the text
Yeah, I
that
think
needs to go with it.
the map that we're missing is our watershed area. And that's actually from our GIS, so it's something that we have, I think it would be. It also delineates wherever your water company is and where our water mains are located as well, generally, how to access them.
So that is it, that's in our possession.
Correct.
Okay, so we need to get,
Okay.
and the roads,
Maps, roads. Looking at this checklist here. Okay,
And changing the objective, you were gonna work on
Yep.
compiling that.
and,
visions and policies,
Making that-
objectives and policies.
and I'll do that for every element
Yeah,
that's here,
okay.
whether we keep it or not. So
And,
there's something to work
yeah,
from if that
I'm-
helps.
I mean, you can, all the planning commission members can, if there's something that pops out at you that when you're looking at the, you know, I think everybody's welcome to do that, and Paige
Mhm.
sounds like she's gonna do a lot too, of that work. And then, you know, we can bring that with a little bit more to talk about. And in the meantime, you were saying that you like the flow of Ridgeways. I don't wanna live in Ridgeway, but you like the flow of how they did their.
I like, there's some stuff in there that is things that we aren't gonna wanna deal with, but the
Yeah.
way that they did, and let me just,
That's an example.
yeah, the way they did, they have 5 elements that they did not, they called them more general things like, let's see if I can get to it. And then under those elements, they came up with their objectives and their policies. And I just found it so much easier to look at.
Okay.
They call them community values. And they have 5 of them. And then each of those had multiple objectives and policies under each of those 5
Okay,
community values. And for instance, their first one is helping natural environment. You know, we didn't go that route. But it's just an example of how they did it. You can see mostly how they did their policy objectives and their growth area
Mhm.
and land use and growth, what did I call it? Growth
framework.
Growth framework, which was in the original for this. And it just didn't get addressed in that jargon in ours. And I'm happy to mail this. I could email it to Stefan to email all of you if you'd like to have it. Easier
And
than
that's
trying to
their
find it.
plan. Okay.
Yeah, this is their
I
adopted
could get it
plan.
onto a thumb drive, maybe that would be helpful.
Okay,
I don't think I have one with me tonight.
I don't.
I have one in the car. I've got one in the car. I think.
We have 7.
Okay, and then as far as, the public's comment about this projected map for the potential zones. Where's that one? It's right here.
Maybe not use the word zones, but like.
Yeah, land, the future land use plan here.
That was,
You know, one thing I do want to say about this comprehensive plan. Why are we thinking about having conservation easements in the town proper? It doesn't make sense to me because we live in this rural area. And the town is for urban, basically. Conservation easements can be around us in the rural, but why would you want that in with your tax base? And that's just the question I'm gonna throw out there, because we're small, we're a very small town. And we're gonna be limited to growth by the water system and the resources we have. So it's nice to think of conservation easements, but you're gonna be taking away from housing too, housing opportunities.
just think about the riverfront property in the lower area.
Mhm.
And that's one that had been looked at for a conservation easement to go from the school to the library over a bridge.
Okay. So areas that you cannot build in, but I'm not in agreement when we're taking platted zoned parcels and turning them into conservation
I don't
easements.
think
That's
you
harmful
can,
to
they're
the-
too small.
Okay, down in River Bay.
I mean, you can't, all these small properties, you couldn't really do a
Well,
conservation easement.
Hawks Haven. That was.
Yeah, but they
Vista
bought a
was-
huge property and they broke it up.
Well, that was platted R2 lots. It was a subdivision that they turned into conservation.
he
And
made it all
I'm just
back
saying, I
then.
don't want to see that happening. I mean, that's just me. I can't tell. Okay, Bill?
I agree. If, number one, we don't have a zoning classification for conservation easements. And what's not specifically permitted is prohibited. And the conservation easements that we have severely constrain the growth of this town. And the conservation easements in Hawk Haven are absolutely on platted lots, R2. And if the board at that time had had their stuff together, I mean, it was completely against their will. It was forced down their throat. And if they'd had it together, they'd have realized that it's not permitted by our zoning. They could have prevented it. It totally screwed up and that's another thing that should be in this plan, is somehow opening up the loop between Hawks Haven and Pan American. Because that's a civic planning disaster. If that's closed. We've got two neighborhoods with only one entrance and exit. And that was never the intention of anybody in this town to let that come. It was a bad deal. But if we're gonna have conservation easements at all, I think they should definitely be by a special review with some guidelines that they don't shut off the ability of the town to expand, which is what we've got now.
Yeah,
It just get worse.
Yeah. So the expansion will just happen in density and
I
then
just don't see there standing up that much, and it's where they could do it, other than maybe park.
Yeah, okay, okay, so we got a little, distracted there at the verge. Okay, where are we here?
Can I?
Yeah, Bill?
We've got people that are interested enough to sit this long. Maybe it's time to see if they have anything to say that might help us kind of sum up here.
Any more comments, questions from the public?
I'll make just a couple comments. Again, Charles Stewart. You've got the comprehensive plan that's in place now, which is outdated. And basically, my recollection was that they really envisioned all of Grand Avenue being commercial. It really envisioned commercial expansion. And that was all prior to the internet explosion. And that never happened. And so now you've got really everything from 3rd to 4th on Grand Avenue converting basically to residential use. And that's just really kind of highlighting one point from that existing comprehensive plan. So you've got something in place that has to be dealt with. It has to be repealed, replaced. So what you're doing is a lot of work. There's probably two ways on two extremes in terms of how this comprehensive plan that you're working on now would be used. You could have a situation where, you know, you fight over every word, you spend tons of time, it gets adopted, and it literally gets put in the drawer, and nobody really looks at it. That could easily happen. On the other end, there's a very real possibility that boards in the future, with every zoning request, zoning change request, every land use request, the board pulls this plan out and basically focuses in on one sentence or one word or one paragraph. So I understand that this process has been going on a long time. And I think, quite frankly, what happens is a lot of people really don't participate until there's a product that's actually before the board. And then people start going, gee, well, how does this, affect my property? That's how people really, I think, really start looking at it. So I understand you've got some time restraints because of the grant and getting paid, which is terribly terribly important. So hopefully you can work out some way to get an extension on that. But I would be very supportive of you folks taking the time to try to do this as correctly as possible. You know, you're not going to please everybody. That's not possible. But it does seem to me that it'd be very helpful if you get rid of as many conflicts and ambiguities that exist in the document, and also make it something that is usable. And that's really why I brought up just the issue of the map, because there is this practical question that's going to get asked: what planning area is my property in? And that's going to come up in the context of a zoning change request or land use review or something of that nature. And people are going to be looking at this and they're going to try to figure out which planning area is that property in. So that was, you know, the main reason for me being here is just simply saying, gee, I think it would be smart if we had a very clear map that showed exactly where these areas are. That's the only thing I have to say. I appreciate what you're doing. It's nice.
Thank you.
It's helpful.
Okay, anyone else?
Sorry, so Christina Patterson, Pricer. Just say real quick, another master plan that is so simplified and easy to read is the Olathe master plan. It's like 35 pages. It is so organized and comprehensive and has goals and then objectives to reach those goals. And it's worthwhile. It's like it's a real easy read and makes so much sense. Thank you.
Thank you. I like the sound of the link of that.
And it's a statutory town and it's only like, less than 2,000 people, just like us.
When master plans become too big, it's just, I mean, it's hard to know. It's like drinking out of a fire hose. You don't know where to start looking. So something that's really focused would be beneficial. Because it's hard to represent things in this town anyway, so. Okay, great. So, what do you want to do for another meeting? Getting comments together. Do you have any ideas? And Bill, I mean, we were talking about page.
I think August 2nd is still a good,
Okay, what day?
only because that's,
Second.
it's
Is
not
that
very
the
far away,
Wednesday?
but it's not
But
it's not the end of the week either. Let me get up my calendar.
And that meeting will have some of these things in front of us and we'll sit and go from that point.
Well, I'm wondering,
Yeah, but even if you focused on one thing, if you didn't have time for anything else, just, to start, like. chipping away.
Sam has it.
Okay, so, Sam?
I just wanted to remind you that with the August 2nd date, you do have a planning commission meeting on the 7th where you have 2 public hearings. So I don't know if you guys want to take that into account or not.
So that's on Wednesday, August 7th,
Yes.
that's 6:30, right?
Mhm.
Okay, and August, you said 2nd, please.
Right now, August 2nd is the date for people to get their comments in. And I think
What day is August 7th?
it's a Friday.
Friday.
So it seems as though there needs to be time for people to do their comments. And in this case, Stefan, maybe they don't have to be in the spreadsheet at this point because they're not necessarily getting incorporated. It sounds like maybe it'd be more for the planning commission to look at
To just start teasing out.
and then try to move the date up, but so that there's time to look at it, like my reconfiguration of objectives and goals.
Mhm.
It'd be nice for you all to see that before you schedule a meeting
Right.
or
that's what I
have it
was-
before the meeting.
Yeah,
As you have comments, I would like them to start putting them into a spreadsheet. I think that's the best way to organize everyone's thoughts so that if it needs to come back to this commission, it can in an organized document that's like page number, paragraph starting, comment, or request for edit, and then the person making those comments or requests.
So what kind of time frame? So August 2nd is 2 weeks away.
2 weeks away from today.
So,
Friday.
sorry, I'm,
Well, it's not Friday today, so is it 2 weeks or less, more than 2 weeks or less?
well, what I'm thinking about is if the comments don't get to the town hall until the 2nd, it's gonna take a bit to organize them.
Yeah.
And I don't know if anybody else out there in the community
You know what?
is trying to make comments to hit it by August 2nd.
So actually, from what we've talked about, we're talking about kind of clarifying things a little bit more amongst ourselves. And that might be better for public to comment on, because right now, this is kind of a raw document in a way, you know what I mean? And to be efficient, you know what I mean? It's like, it's almost like we need to get a little bit together, don't you think? So people don't feel like they're wasting their time on elements that we're not even gonna be discussing at this point in time. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah, I'm just, I just wonder if we're preempting the product. Because there would have to be a motion made, right, if recreation was taken out? And is that?
Well, we don't have to take it out, we can just say that we're putting it to the side and we're focusing on X, Y, and Z first. Okay, Stefan?
So I think it would be really important to see the direction the Board of Trustees gave at the last meeting. I know there were some dissension votes. However, it did pass. I believe that they did set dates and deadlines and timelines.
Right.
They did that.
August
Specific direction.
Yes.
Do you recall what those were?
Well, the motion was made though, but out,
You see it.
No, page, go ahead.
I'd just say the motion was made and it's out there in the public for comments to come in August 2nd, because that's in the agenda packet that was sent out. So it seems like that's still a reasonable date
Yeah.
for accepting comments.
So if people want
And then
to
maybe
comment, they can comment.
Yeah.
But I think we've had some productive discussion here about the direction we might need to go with this to make it a better plan, and the board isn't privy to that, you know, so if the board knew, it could change meeting dates, but for now, we can say August 2nd. I just don't want to be crying wolf on the public all the time, or they're like, what? No, you know, so, go ahead.
They set a deadline noon on the 2nd with a joint meeting to be held September 4th.
And they're talking about a plan that adopts it, they're not talking about any extensions.
Yeah. Meeting in between. Well, could we wait and see what the essence of the comments are?
Yeah, we can
And
start
then-
working too,
And work on the things that everybody is their personal, like,
yeah, things that are important to
Mhm.
people,
and then,
yeah.
and tomorrow night is a regular meeting. So wondering if this could be just, talk about this under mayor's report. We could talk about it under the mayor's report, I suppose,
And just
what we
kinda
did today.
what we did, yeah, just let people know what.
Yeah, as parliamentarians, is that reasonable? For me to do that as a verb, I have a written mayor's report, but can I also verbally discuss this meeting today? And that we're still gonna look for comments August 2nd, but we may need an intermediate meeting set up to
Kind of refocus some of the.
It's important information.
Yeah.
We certainly are.
but that's almost like an agenda thing, isn't it?
I would wonder if we should check with our town attorney and see about you maybe adding a discussion item like vote or something that wouldn't take action, that would just be an update, but I feel more familiar or feel better with that because I don't think
Hmm.
the master plan is in your report, so.
So it's not,
Yeah, so,
no, it would just,
Stefan.
Doesn't matter. So a mayor's report could, any trustee's report, any mayor's report can have items that may not be in the agenda packet. You can add things to it as your report. And then it becomes a matter of public record at the meeting. So I don't think it's necessary to add an agenda item. I think that would just convolute the waters.
Yeah, thank
And
you.
cause ire from trustees. So I think we ought to just present
Can
it.
I go ahead and
Yeah, that's
do a
what
summary?
to me.
Yeah.
I'm comfortable with that one. Thank you for that.
And just say, just explain what came up and that there's certain places we kind of want to focus on. And still asking for comments by August 2nd, and that, based on the comments, here's where I'm a little not sure. So I'll submit my comment, which will be this reconfiguration. And you all won't see it until after August 2nd. But it needs, though, that and the maps need to be done before there's a final draft put together. So we have an intermediate step we hadn't planned for, is what I'm getting at, where people need to see some of the rewrite before we can even say we have a final draft.
Or a draft.
Or a
Yes.
draft.
Or a draft,
A
yeah.
draft. Okay, Stephanie.
So I think you can make it more restricted. The Board of Trustees set a framework for with which you guys can operate. They put the railroad tracks there. How you organize the carts on that track is up to you. So if you decide that you need to have additional meetings to go over the comments that have been discussed, you can hold those as long as you're within those railroad tracks.
Okay. Works for me.
So we
I just
can,
wasn't quite sure.
yeah, okay, no, that's good. So what do we, so how many? Oh, okay, so I'm just thinking as far as, just kind of maybe planning ahead for when would we maybe, would it be a weekly meeting? Would it be every 2 weeks? I mean, do we want to kind of just, how do we want to do meetings? It's good to know.
What did he say?
Virtual.
Yeah.
Virtual.
I don't think that would do.
No.
What, Bill? You have a suggestion?
I think if we're gonna do this, we're gonna have to put in more than one monthly meeting. And I think you have severe time constraints. Does Monday work for you?
Monday is the one day that I know where I'm gonna be.
And I think we should figure on some meetings on Mondays, maybe on a 2-week schedule.
Yeah, and it can be at 6 too. I mean, it's a little, but it doesn't have to be 6:30. Yeah, are you comfortable with that?
I'm fine with that, but I like the idea of seeing the comments.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah.
that's what I think
do
people
too.
need to see them
And if
before
the
you,
comments aren't gonna
Unless
come
you-
in until the second.
unless you do.
Because
it.
So,
Seems like we get the cart before the horse.
yeah, I know, I do.
Here's how about that?
So what are we here?
Stefan, how many comments were there
We have the Mondays
the
on.
last time there was a comment?
Yeah, yeah. And then,
What do you mean?
How many sets of coherent
comments?
comments did you get?
From which from each element?
The last time there was a comment deadline and then the whole thing got
Oh,
stopped and sent back.
so for the housing needs assessment, we got quite a few comments. I think there were, that was on the final draft. So throughout the entire process, there was information gathering, but that final housing needs assessment, was it 60 plus comments and requests for edits? It we put into a spreadsheet.
There was an adoption hearing scheduled. Do you know how many comments have been received on this plan when that adoption was scheduled? That was on July 16th or something originally, it was posted.
There was a comment round in May. You and I were on that one.
Right,
That's-
maybe
That's the one you're
what I'm
thinking of.
referring to.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it looks like those comments, a lot of them are comments for dog size. But those comments, let's see, I'm trying to get to the right page. There's lots of them. So and these were printed off emails, so they might not, each page mean a comment, but from page 358 to 251, there are 107 pages of comments. But some of them look like they were forwards, so
And there's a
those were
huge amount of
comments on
dark
the-
skies.
that was going back to May 14th until
That's a lot
June.
of comments, so
But they were very redundant on black skies, on dark skies.
A lot of them were dark sky comments, so I was kind of teasing them out a little bit.
Do you think dark sky is adequately represented here? If that's how many comments came in on dark sky?
Yes,
So
since I've started. I
Yeah,
think
it's
it's
great.
adequately reflected.
comments can come in on the second, but we can still meet on the fifth, and we might even see some.
Yeah. I mean, we will probably have our IDA designation. Hopefully by the end of August.
Oh, cool.
So it's close, so that's why we wanted to make sure they were in there. We couldn't really say, yeah, we are a designated dark sky town, but it's important for people to know.
Yes.
So, 2 weeks from now is the fifth of August. Do you feel comfortable having a meeting with the fifth? In Pageville,
I do.
okay, it's open for me, Bill. And it's okay.
They can't get here.
And maybe Pete will be back by then.
Let's hope.
Join us. Okay, so let's say the fifth at 6 o'clock. Does that sound good? And it will be meeting again. If you bring comments, bring your thoughts, and we'll discuss the comprehensive plan and look at Page's work.
Yeah, and I'm wondering, if I got mine reshuffled and done, and I'm gonna reshuffle in the entire document. I'm gonna work with the entire thing and reshuffle all of them, so the content's still there. Maybe I could get that done so you could all see it before
See
the
work
second
product before the second.
and have Stefan share it with you. And then,
And then we can rip off. of
and
it.
then that could be ready to be looked at on the fifth, because it could then be put into an agenda packet. Would that help?
I think it would, because then if we're gonna be looking at, alignment objectives and policies, and that we might be able to fit things in there that weren't even in there. So we can really look at what's.
Look at Alana's plan.
I will,
That
I
sounds
will
good.
look at theirs, yeah.
Uh,
Thanks for that.
Plan. Olathe's plan looks to be over 10 years old, so it's probably on its way to being updated.
But I mean, the format.
format.
would be interesting.
How's the format look to you?
Significantly different than the format we've got, significantly different from Whiteways.
Oh,
Well, look at it anyway, see what you think.
But I think your idea of where we can, track it, right? One below the other, and then we can determine this needs to be added in, or this is missing, or this doesn't make sense. Because it really gives us a framework to
Yeah.
move around, that's a little bit not as cumbersome.
I think it'll help, and I could show where maybe I combined my values into one, because there's some redundancy.
There is, yeah.
It's more than I can digest with the bullet points, and
But it's hard for people to comment on something.
Exactly.
It's hard to digest.
right, so if I can, okay, yeah, I will do it.
Okay, great. Okay, so, meeting on the fifth, it's like 6 o'clock.
And we know the fifth is open. You might check to make sure that-
Any other meetings?
I take time off.
By the way, do we have a, we're recording this? Okay, well, with that, is Stephanie checking?
I think the meeting was available.
Okay, so
And
okay, thank you.
we'll talk about Stefan's participation.
Okay,
We
So-
may just go it alone.
yeah, well, I mean, it's not anything fun. It's work. Things can always be changed from that. Okay, great, so, let's adjourn the meeting.